Hello and welcome. My name is Marta Carlo. I am the founder of the International Parenting and Health Institute, as well as the Director of Education. And I am joined by our primary integrative adult sleep coach, instructor, and founder of Start with Sleep, Soda Kuczkowski. And we are going to speak to you today about a very hot topic, a question that comes up often in our very passionate world of sleep, which is, can you catch up on sleep? It's a common question that happens throughout many stages in life, not only for children as they're progressing from, childhood through their teen years into adulthood, but then as adults, we go through various different stages, including pregnancy and postpartum. People go through many life events. We have shift workers, and people quite often wonder, is this something that is, am I ruined for life? Can I catch up? What's the deal? So, Soda, how about we start with you today? Where should we begin with this really important question?
Well, I think to start the conversation, I think what's really important is to talk about the term sleep deprivation, right? In 2015, the Center for Disease Control declared sleep deprivation a public health epidemic, meaning people are just like, they're really getting into this sleep debt situation where they're not sleeping long enough to meet their sleep needs, right? So they're shorting themselves. They feel like they need 7 or 8, but maybe they're only sleeping 5 or 6, and they get into this collective debt. And that's where that conversation of, can I catch up on sleep? I like to make the joke that, for 16 years, I've been working in sleep, and I'm constantly reminding the same people, including people like my mother, that if you stay up watching TV till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, the solution is not to go to bed at 7 or 8 o'clock the next night, because that isn't a way to kind of recalibrate or reset your sleep, right? It's all about keeping that consistency. And people think, well, I can offset it by sleeping in on the weekends, but the question remains, is that true or isn't it, right? And that's where we get into it depends kind of situation.
That's right.
There is a lot in terms of what we know in terms of the research, whether or not it does offset that sleep debt. We tend, especially as women, we have a very much higher threshold for things like sleep deprivation, but we're also, the population in general is very bad at determining whether or not there has been a cognitive or physical decline when it comes to sleep. We feel like, oh, we can push through it, but we don't realize the effects that it has, especially when we're sleeping less than 6 hours per night.
Yes, exactly. So then just to reiterate and to clarify for everybody who's listening and may have not heard of this terminology before, it would be sleep debt or sleep deficit, right? They're interchangeable. They're used quite often. And basically, as Soda was saying, it's the amount of sleep that you actually need versus the amount you're actually having. So if you actually need 8 hours of sleep, but you're only getting 6, then your sleep debt would be those 2 hours, right? And so what's happening is that, as Soda was explaining, often people will say, oh, I can just catch up. I'll go to bed, earlier the next night. It'll be fine. But then this brings us to the next topic, which is the acute versus chronic sleep debt. So Soda, talk to us a little bit about that, and then I'll add my thoughts as well. The difference between acute versus chronic.
Yeah, so the acute being the short term, and even one bad night of sleep can do everything from affecting our ability to develop anti-cancer cells. It affects the hormones that regulate our appetite and our hunger. We tend to consume more calories the next day. Women who sleep poorly tend to consume a lower quality diet. So there's a number of things that can happen just with one bad night of sleep, right? So that's that short term. We get into chronic. Chronic is anything that is 3 or more months is what we think about in terms of chronic. And that's where we see those long-term chronic health conditions. So where you might have seen kind of scary statistics or things that are covered in the media where they do these kind of small cohorts or different studies. And it shows that within 3 days, you can become pre-diabetic, even if you're a healthy individual who exercises, you hydrate, you're eating the right, nutrients and so forth. We see this dysregulation in our ability to maintain our health because we're not sleeping well. And it can happen, in the short term, but in the long term, that's where we see the correlation between things like cardiovascular health, higher incident of stroke and heart attack, diabetes, high blood pressure, and where we're not sleeping well, that lack of good sleep health, right? The quality of sleep can lead into more chronic, not only sleep medical conditions, but other chronic health issues as well.
Exactly. And what most people are unaware of is that it takes on average about 4 days, I believe, to recuperate from an hour of sleep loss. I believe that's the right amount or somewhere along those lines. And the other aspect to this, which is pretty interesting and a little bit scary, but thankfully there's more awareness and education. That's what we're trying to do here. We're very passionate about raising awareness and really educating people as much as possible. Is, this notion as well, it's not only about, oh, I can just catch up on sleep the next night and sleep earlier, but I'll have my Red Bull, I'll have an extra coffee. And the amount of stimulants that people are taking in, thinking that this is the answer. The answer is that I'll just pump myself up with something that'll jolt my body awake. No problem. I can handle it. But as Soda was saying, the chronic happens, and over time you will start to see this deterioration. And what most people also are not aware of, which is also something very scary, but again very good to be very conscious of, is that your body will make it seem like you're adapting. Often people don't know until something very grave or severe begins to happen, and they'll start to notice. They'll think, oh, I'm just fine. They may be chronically sleep deprived and feel like I am just fine, I'm handling it. And in fact, they are not. And even though their body is making it, or they seem like it's giving the illusion that it is. And so it's usually not until something really starts to kick in, where they've reached their limit, that then they start to wake up. But we want to prevent people from getting to that point.
Yeah. And that's where that consistency really plays a role, like not turning in early. There's the whole thought process of catching up on sleep during the weekend, and you can offset it a bit. But the thing is, it doesn't help with that metabolic dysregulation, which is, it still affects your waistline, your ability to be healthy, and all the physiological processes that are occurring inside. So you might feel a little bit more rested, but you're not helping everything internally that needs to be kept in sync. And we as individuals, we love to do things that disrupt our 24-hour clock. We all operate on our own biological clock, this 24-hour circadian rhythm. And things like light regulation, hydration, being consistent, caffeine consumption, like you had mentioned, overstimulating with not only coffee, but those energy drinks. We can find it in things like medication and candy and different. We're just constantly we're constantly taking in things that are disrupting our ability to maintain that cycle.
Absolutely, 100%. And so most people will be wondering, as they're watching us, all right, well, what are the solutions? And I think it's really important first to distinguish, again, going back to the acute versus chronic, because some people may feel, all right, I don't have any control over my situation. I'm a shift worker, or maybe I'm, pregnant and I'm just not sleeping well, or I just had a baby and my baby's not sleeping and I'm going through these nights. So there is hope and there are solutions. It's just that we want people to also be aware that it's not something that you can get away with or think you can get away with. However, thankfully, there are things that you can do. If it's more acute, then it'll be a little bit easier to work with. If it's more chronic, again, depending on each circumstance and situation, will depend on how much longer and what needs to be done to what extent to support you in the process. But there are many things in your lifestyle that Soda was sharing. Nutrition is a huge one. I often see so much attention being brought to the light in the dark, the power naps. I'll talk about yoga nidra in a second, because that's also very important. Your stress levels, the overstimulation from those blue lights, and just the noise in general. But the nutrition aspect is a big one, because people also don't realize often how much nutrition can be for you or against you with your anti and pro sleep foods. And so I don't want to say this, don't take me the wrong way. I don't want to say you can get away with less sleep, but I'll just put it to you this way. If your nutrition is supporting you so well, and again, it's very relevant to each individual, their stress levels, what's going on. Most people will have a better capacity of dealing with sleep deprivation if their nutrition's on par. That doesn't mean I am encouraging it, but I'm just saying that is how powerful nutrition can be in supporting you through the process. So if you're going through, pregnancy and postpartum, if you are a shift worker and you've had just, a few of those nights where you couldn't take your power nap, you've had an extra noisier household than normal, waking you up during the day, et cetera, when you're trying to get your rest, there are definitely things that can be done in the interim to get you through that small stage. If it's chronic, of course, there's going to be much more, as I mentioned before. But the whole point is that this is a lifestyle. It's something, as Soda was saying, we have to be consistent about. It's not something that we can just, oh, no problem, no worries. If it's acute, if it's something small, stressing out about it can also be a big issue, right? So let's just say that you had a baby and your baby, now you're into your second month and you've lost quite a bit of sleep. Absolutely looking at the fact that, all right, this is a passing stage. Of course, seek help intuitively. There has to be a thorough evaluation of your situation. Every case is different. But the stress itself can also pose a huge issue also, and make the situation much worse. So whenever there's a challenge in sleep or in anything, but in this particular case with sleep, look at it for what it is and know that you going onto that path and journey of discovering what it is and finding a solution that will give you the confidence to move through it, versus being in a state of fear and stress, which will then add, more problems to your health. I'll just say that. So anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, just what you were saying, the nutrition is such a big part of it, because people don't realize, like, it's not just about eating a healthy, nutritious diet. It's about eating to promote a healthy sleep cycle. When we talk about vitamin D deficiency, it can be attributed to things like medical sleep disorders, right? It's been tied to things like sleep apnea. We know it's tied to things like seasonal affective disorder, serotonin, like all these different things that keep us healthy, stabilize our mood, and help our sleep as well. But if you don't sleep, if you're not getting enough sleep, our body also doesn't have the ability to absorb a lot of the nutrients from our food. So that's something to be said. I've worked with clients where they're exercising and they're eating a nutrient-rich diet, but if you're not sleeping well, it compromises all of that. And like your hydration goes into that. If you're not drinking enough water, that can deplete your body's ability to maintain nutrients. If you're over caffeinating, like we mentioned with a lot of the energy drinks or with caffeine, that can also strip essential minerals and vitamins, magnesium being one of the most important. There's a study that says upwards of 80 to 90% of the population is magnesium deficient, and it helps with a number, it's like 300 biochemical reactions in the body. It helps us to stabilize a number of different things. But if we're making choices throughout the day, these little day-to-day lifestyle choices that we're making, we could be depleting ourselves of that. Even if you're taking a supplement, even if you're eating a magnesium rich diet, you might not be getting what you need from it because of all of the other choices that you're making. So it's a collective. That's where that holistic approach again comes into place, where we're looking at all of the little things that are connected, right? Our nutrition is an important piece of that.
Right. Absolutely, 100%, because you could be eating very well, exercising, but if you are on this constant go, 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 go lifestyle and stressed out all the time, and you're rushing your food down your body, and you're under this chronic stress over time, that will also kick in. And as Soda was saying, that will then affect everything else. It's like a domino effect. And so it is a matter of understanding that everything is about the balance of it. It's understanding how everything integrates and connects together in your lifestyle with your health, and then figuring out what works best for you. Everybody's slightly different. One thing that I like to do and where I like to start from often is checking in with your breath as well. Because often when you're not aware of what's happening in your life and you start to pay attention for the first time, your breath is a really good indicator of just, how much on the go you are, how much relaxed you are, and just checking in a few times during the day. How am I breathing? Am I breathing fast? Am I, is it all up on my chest? Where am I? Just starting to be really conscious of this home that you're living in, your body, right? So this is the home you take with you everywhere. And the more conscious and aware you are of your body and how your body's feeling, then you'll start to understand, oh my gosh, I did not realize that I'm under a lot of stress. I did not realize that I'm a go, 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 and I'm not taking any pauses during the day. I'm just on the run. And so those kinds of things will start to really support you through this path and process. There is solutions. There are solutions. There is help for you. And it's just a matter of having the courage and also taking the accountability, having the courage to take accountability to say, all right, I'm going to begin to uncover, what this is, what's happening with me. I'm going to begin to discover my body, my lifestyle, what's going on, and taking the judgment aside. This is not, when you're on a path of holistic health and change, positive change and improvement, it's not about I'm a bad person or look how bad my lifestyle's been and about judging yourself. It's going, wow, I've reached a stage in my life I want to improve. So I'm going to put the judgment aside. I'm going to uncover what's there. And now I'm going to begin to make some changes to empower myself. And then, as Soda was saying, you take those baby steps, right? It actually is, interestingly enough, those small, simple steps that end up being the greatest changes for us. It's not these big, elaborate changes you need to make right away. It's those small decisions you're making on a day-to-day basis that add up, that make the greatest change, right, Soda?
Yeah. One being, the purpose of this call to talk about catching up on sleep, sleeping in on the weekends. Now, an average adult sleep cycle is 90 minutes. It's between 70 to 110 minutes. So if you're looking to sleep in on the weekend, people love to hit the snooze button, or they try to clock in those extra Z's. If you ever slept in and then you wake up and you actually feel worse than if you had actually initially gotten up, it's all about timing, right? So if you're sleeping in on the weekend, also being conscious of sleeping an additional 90 minutes, or using an application like a sleep cycle alarm app that can kind of base an algorithm based on your sleep patterns, so that you can figure out what's the best time for you to wake up, so you can clock those additional hours, but make them meaningful. And I think, the point that you made is so important. I've been talking a lot about that in my work as of recent. There's so much like guilt and shame that we place on ourselves. Like, people are so quick to say, oh, I do everything wrong. And healthcare is so disempowering, right? It's like, it's about creating those healthy habits, not restrictions, and figuring out, what, I can just make these small tweaks and be forgiving of ourselves. We lead our lives, and it's about making healthier choices when we can, and being, when you know better, you do better, and not necessarily always shaming or always inflicting that negative self-talk on yourself, like, oh, you don't have self-control, or you missed your bedtime again. Tomorrow's a new day. It's a fresh start, right? You can start all over again. But when it comes to your sleep, it's all about consistency. If you stay up too late, stay up and the next night and hit your bedtime. Don't go to bed at 9 o'clock. If you normally go to bed at 11, go to bed at 11. And waking up at the same time every single morning is going to be one of the most impactful things you can do for keeping that consistency, because that's going to help promote your sleep drive, and your body's going to know when it's tired if you're consistently waking up at the same time.
Absolutely, 100%. And you hit something so important, which is about your thoughts and your beliefs. So adding on to the whole, judgment and shame and things like that, your thoughts and beliefs play a huge role, because the moment you limit yourself by saying to yourself, oh, I don't think I can do this, or I'm always doing this, oh, I'm such a bad sleeper, just that thought alone is already then creating another opportunity for that to happen again, because we are creatures of habits and patterns. So it is talking about consistency. Your thoughts also work on consistency. What you're telling yourself every single day and every single moment consistently is then what's supporting you consistently, all those habits. And, you wonder why you make the decisions you're making. You're like, why did I make that decision? I know better. Well, guess what? You form very strong patterns, very strong thoughts around those decisions that you're making. And so as a result, you're more susceptible to making that same decision again, because that thought keeps replaying itself on a daily basis. But the moment you catch it and you go, wait a minute. I'm going to change this belief. I'm going to change this thought. I'm going to now start going in another direction. You know what? I can do this. Every time I've interviewed people who've had like these major life changes, and I ask them, what was that turning point? And it's so interesting to hear that they had that thought that I can do this. And they started shifting and changing the way they perceive themselves and their lifestyle, right? They not only stopped that judgment and shaming, but they realized, like, I'm going to start thinking differently about myself and my life. And something else to consider is that, we often put all this pressure and all this blame on ourselves, like Soda was also saying, without also recognizing, and it's not playing victim at all, but it's just putting things in context, that the entire environment and society and culture around me actually is feeding into this fast-paced, crazy culture. The food products, the drinks, with those overstimulating drinks, energy drinks. I mean, everything is feeding into this fast-paced, go, consumerism culture. So it's not just you, okay? So what it is about is saying, okay, I recognize what's happening out there. I'm now going to, I may not control what's happening out there, but what I can control is what's happening within me and around me. And now I'm going to take that charge and I can do this. And so when you begin to empower yourself with this way of thinking and perspective, you are going to find those solutions that are right for you, whether it's, starting with, the consistent bedtime. Like if that's the easiest thing for you to get right away, go for it. If it's adding that power nap in, if it's, okay, maybe you had an extra tough week. And so you sleep in a little bit extra this weekend without overdoing it. So to say, you want within that 1-2 hour window, little things like that. Yoga Nidra, which there's so many, by the way, in our program, in our integrative adult sleep coach program, we cover so many of these, and that's, believe it or not, just a fraction actually of what's out there. There's so many breathing techniques, so many meditations, so many beautiful available resources. But when you work with any of them, you will start to find that the moment you start working with regulating your breath, your thought process, your nervous system, you will begin to notice shifts and changes immediately. So Yoga Nidra is an ancient practice. It's actually known as yogic sleep. It's a very ancient practice. And basically, the results, just to give you an idea of a Yoga Nidra practice, is 1 hour of it will equate to about 4 hours of restorative sleep on average. Obviously, there's other things that come into play, but this is just to give you an understanding of how powerful of an exercise this is. And so do you have to do an hour? You might not have an hour. Maybe you could do 15 minutes or 30 minutes. But the point is any kind of exercise, whether it's Yoga Nidra or a daily pause, or I think one of our recent students just did a fun inspirational video on her stories about Dr. Andrew Weil's 4-7-8 breathing technique. Finding what works for you and then beginning to put it into your daily practice as a way that you can start to invite something that will recalibrate and balance your nervous system, that will help you to take a step back and realize, oh, okay, let me do a check-in so that you're not just on this robotic automated mode. If you're on robot mode, chances are is you're not going to be aware of the choices you're making. And then, as we've been sharing so far, you're going to find yourself, in sleep deprivation, tired, fatigue, and so on. But when you start to be aware of what's happening and you start to add in those self checks, you're going to have the ability to empower yourself more and make those changes.
Absolutely. And I think it's such an important point that you make about the Yoga Nidra. And I think that has to go with the fact that people really confuse, like when you're sleep deprived, when you're tired, when you're exhausted, when you're burnt out, all these things, they're not necessarily interchangeable because they're notified, like it's telling your body that you need self-care and you need different types of rest. That's why we talk about that mind-body connection. With Yoga Nidra, that helps to relax the mind, which in turn physically helps to relax the body. And those are separate things, right? We come out of sync with one another. And that's why those practices are so impactful.
Exactly. I love it. So if you struggle with any of this, know that there's hope. Know that there's hope. There's a lot of information and resources that are available to you. If you have any specific questions or going through something, feel free to write them in the comments below. Let us know. We're always looking for ways to communicate to you and to support you through any of the challenges you're going through. Soda and I are very passionate about our work. This is why we teach what we teach, and we support professionals globally as well as clients around the world. And we understand that it's not easy, and that's why we are here to support one another. And when you are opening up to receiving the support of others, even if it's just watching a video, an inspirational video, and then that inspires you to learn more, this is where change begins to really happen for you as well. So, we want to encourage you, inspire you to have that courage to just reach out for help where needed, inspire you to go seek out more information. The world of sleep, I have a book called Awakening Through Sleep, and it is incredible because you do awaken through sleep. You become more alive through sleep. Sleep is not a passive thing, which is another discussion, another topic probably Soda and I can talk about. But it's not passive as people think. It's not, I go to sleep and everything's shut off. It's actually opposite. Other things are coming into play, which lead into many other things. So any parting thoughts or last thoughts, Soda?
No, I mean, in terms of your sleep, we've said this before and we said it in the first discussion. It's all about prioritizing it, right? And everything else, when you think about it holistically, if you prioritize your sleep, all of the choices that you make become so much easier and it will help put everything in place. I mean, with my business, I say that energy filled days start with restful nights, right? So,
Exactly, 100%. Thank you for joining us. If you liked what you watched and want to learn more, please click the like button so other people can view it as well, and the subscribe button, and we will be back with more. Thank you so much for joining.